Hour number 2 on a Friday means Greg Cosell, senior producer from NFL Films, also co-host of the NFL Matchup Show on ESPN. And I think we have to add journalist to his title now that he's doing some writing for the 33rdteam.com, Mike Tannenbaum's site. So, he's doing it all. He's a multimedia juggernaut. So, Greg, how you doing?
Well, and the problem with that, Chris, is there's only 24 hours in a day, so what seems to suffer is the sleep aspect of my life.
Yeah, you can sleep when you're dead.
Can rest
it's
up.
Fine.
You can rest up in March.
Yeah.
Let's begin here, though, Greg, because Trevor Lawrence, while I think he is making progress, there is really no help around him, and there is a chance there might even be less if James Robinson can't play on Sunday. It seems like a monumental task that he has been thrust into here in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. And I think Lawrence has progressed. I don't think he played particularly well this past week. I don't want to say it. I love when people say, is someone regressing? He's a rookie quarterback, so you expect there to be ups and downs, highs and lows. I think for the most part, he's improved as the season has progressed. He's not working with very much. It's a very slow offense. There's no real explosiveness to this offense at all. So it's going to be a process in Jacksonville. And Lawrence is at the point where you don't know from week to week, due to him being a rookie and doing to the rest of the team as well, whether you're going to get a B+ performance or a D performance. So you don't really know, and they don't really know.
How important is James Robinson to this offense? We talked about maybe he might be, the entire offense may run through him because of, what they're trying to protect Lawrence and that kind of thing. How important is James Robinson?
Well, Steve, you know this. When you can run the ball with meaningful production and some kind of volume, that really helps a young quarterback. And there was a stretch for maybe 2 or 3 games where Robinson was a factor. They ran the ball with some consistency, and that's when Lawrence actually looked like he was playing better. If he's out this week, I guess it'll be Carlos Hyde, but Robinson has been a pretty good back for them. But they've not had a consistent run game, and that's been a problem. And the other issue really that shows up to me on tape is their O-line. I mean, this is an O-line for the most part. I guess right guard now they're playing a backup, but for the most part, this has been an O-line that's been together for 2-3 years, and I don't think they play particularly well. I don't fancy myself an offensive line guru, but I don't think for a group that's been together, they play particularly well.
Coverage-wise for them, too, I know at times they've had Shaq Griffin travel with the number one receiver for the other team.
He did this week. He did against Metcalf. I would think he would do that against Diggs.
You do think he would do it against Diggs? Because I
think so.
Yeah, there's been some – it's been a mixed bag. It's been some good, some not so good for him when he's been put into that role.
The reason I would think they would do that, Chris, is – again, I can only speak to what they did last week. When teams are not very good, changes get made in personnel almost on a weekly basis. So I can't say exactly what they'll do on Sunday. But last week, their outside corners were Griffin and the rookie Tyson Campbell. And they played Ford, who's essentially a safety, as the slot corner, which was really interesting because they still have Herndon on the roster, who got snaps last week, some snaps in the slot, but he played more in the dime. So Ford, who's a safety, was really the slot corner. So given that Campbell's a rookie, the corner opposite Griffin, I would think that Griffin would travel with Diggs. Now, he may not travel when Diggs is inside, but I think when Diggs lines up outside, that Griffin would play him.
Okay. Earlier in the week, Urban Meyer admitted that they like to play man a lot, and they just didn't have the horses to do it enough, and they're starting to play more zone. How far has that transition gone?
Well, it's funny you say that because through 7 games, if you just look at the 7 games as an aggregate, they've been a predominant single high safety defense. Cover 1 has been their highest percentage coverage, but it is followed by cover 3. And they will now they're starting to play more cover 2. So that's a fair, obviously Urban Meyer knows his team, so I'm not saying that's a fair statement. I was about to say that as if he doesn't know. But yeah, I think I don't think they have the horses to line up consistently and play cover one. Because, Steve, as you know, cover one, there's an awful lot of routes in which that post safety really is not a factor at all.
Right.
Greg, this number kind of stuck out to me, and we know there's not a lot of good numbers for Jacksonville this year, but only 2 takeaways.
Yeah.
I know they're lacking in terms of pure speed and matchup ability, but do you attribute that more to an inability for their pass rush to get heat on the quarterback, or is it some other predominant factor that you think is not putting them in position to take the ball away more often?
Yeah, and that's turnovers to me, and I'm just being honest with you guys, that's a hard question for me to answer.
Yeah.
Because even if you blitz, and by the way, their blitz percentage is pretty good. They're not a team that doesn't blitz the quarterback. So you're dealing with a team that I've seen on tape both zone pressures, man pressures. I don't think they're particularly good at it, Chris, but it's not as if they don't try to play with some aggression. And turnovers are a crazy thing. I mean, I'm not a coach, and I'm sure coaches will tell you that you can coach in a way that maybe produces more turnovers. I don't know if you saw the game last night where Darius Leonard literally punched the ball out of Michael Carter's hand. I know that stuff is kind of coached at times, but there's no guarantee. I mean, he could have tried to do that and missed by half an inch, and it wouldn't have been a fumble. So I never really know exactly how to deal with turnovers.
Yeah. Right. So why don't we take it from this angle? You mentioned how they haven't been shy about trying to pressure. How effective has their pass rush been? I mean, they're 27th in sacks per play. I know that's just one number, but, I mean, from what you've seen on film, do they at least hurry throws, force quarterbacks into ill-advised decisions? Can they at least do that if they're not getting the quarterback on the ground?
I would say they are not doing that as well as they would like to be doing that.
Okay.
So, yeah. And look, one of the reasons you pressure, as you guys know, is not necessarily to get sacks. Obviously, if that's the result, particularly if it's third down, you're thrilled. But you're trying to speed up the quarterback. You're trying to force him into mistakes. If you do blitz at times, you also know where the ball has to go based on then how you play coverage in tandem with your pressure. So there's all kinds of ways in which you can create issues for an offense. I don't think they're really good at it at this point.
You had a nice article in the 33rd Team that you wrote. And you asked the question. Josh Allen didn't ask the question. You said the title is Josh Allen may be on his way to becoming the NFL's best quarterback. That would probably be in print the first time I've ever heard anybody say that. He's so polarizing and has been throughout the first couple of years. Now, I think everybody has to nod to the fact that Josh Allen is a very good quarterback in the National Football League. It didn't look like he was ever going to get there when he was in college. He had all these question marks. But I think he's answered those doubters. And I get what you said about Josh. I want to equate that in the first couple of years of Josh Allen's career to Trevor Lawrence. A kid who's coming into what was also a team that was, you go to a bad team when you get drafted that high. Where do because they're both gifted guys, but Trevor Lawrence comes in as a can't miss. Josh Allen came in as a probably will miss. What's the difference?
Isn't it funny how that works?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I actually wrote in June. Peter King had asked me to be one of the guest writers in his Football Morning in America column. So I wrote in June that Josh Allen is the most physically gifted quarterback in the league, which I firmly believe, by the way. And I said, at that point in June, I said, he's not the best quarterback in the league, but he's the most physically gifted. And now I really think, and it's funny because I thought this game against Miami last Sunday was one of his best games. And the numbers might not reflect that. He didn't throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. But I thought the nature of that game and the way it played out and the way he had to play that game really showed his growth and his understanding of how to play through the flow and pace of given games. But anyway, getting to Trevor Lawrence, I never bought into I thought Lawrence was a good prospect, clearly. But I never bought into the generational stuff. That when you've been doing this as long as I have, it's very hard for me to be so superlative about, every once in a while there's a guy that just demands that based on my study of tape. But I just didn't buy into watching Trevor Lawrence on film that we haven't seen a quarterback like that, in 25 years. Now, I think he'll end up being a good player, but studies have been done, guys, and you may know this, that show that if you go to a bad team, and make no mistake, Jacksonville is not a good team, that really hinders and slows down the development of a quarterback. So we might not see Trevor Lawrence develop at the rate we would like to see. Don't forget, Josh Allen is also on a team, and I love Josh Allen, as you guys know, based on film. He's on a team with a really good defense, and the Bills have had a good defense in pretty much, he's in his fourth year, correct? In the 4 years he's been there, they've had a good defense.
Right. Getting back to Josh, the stats are pretty apparent that this season, blitzing Josh has proven to make him a little bit more ineffective. His completion percentage is 13% less when he's blitzed, and I would imagine that's the case for a lot of quarterbacks. And his yards per attempt go down. But the thing is, 9 of his 17 touchdown passes have come when he's under pressure this year. No other player has more than 5 touchdown passes when pressured. So how do defensive coordinators weigh numbers like that when they're deciding how to attack Josh? I mean, yes, the completion percentage is down. You'd say, okay, that's good. But sometimes he's so physically gifted, he may beat us for 6 points. So I'm just curious the dichotomy that puts a defensive coordinator in.
Yeah, and I think you have to play as well to what you are as a defense. We know that a team like Miami, under Brian Flores, has been a fairly high percentage blitz defense. So they came out this past week, for instance, and they were very blitz heavy in the first half, including meaningful snaps of 0. And I thought that their man pressures were a big factor in the first half. The Bills couldn't generate any explosive plays. I thought Josh was comfortable against it. I thought he threw the ball short quickly, but they didn't really generate any meaningful plays, any chunk plays. And then I thought that in the second half, and it was obviously a halftime adjustment, they came out with more no huddle, a little bit of tempo, and they calmed down the pressures. And that's when you started to see a little bit more. And then, of course, the touchdown to Diggs was just beautiful. That did come against pressure. And it also shows something that is absolutely true, that a first-level defender, because Emmanuel Ogbah was unblocked on that play, and he's a first-level defender, that if you have 3-step drop timing and the ball comes out on time, even a first-level defender is not going to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, and it was interesting, too, that the longer that game went on, and Josh said this and I think it was kind of telling by Josh Allen. He said, we try to do some things to get them out of that 0 blitz coverage.
Yeah.
Meaning, and when he says they were trying to get him out of it, I think it's obvious. He says they don't like him in it. And, as a quarterback.
Of course. Well, you get a little limited in what you can do. I mean, look, can you throw fade balls and hope you hit one and, get a 60-yard touchdown? Sure. But for the most part, because unless you want to keep – the other part of that, Steve, as you well know, is you can block it, but then you have to keep people in. And I don't think they want to limit the number of eligible receivers in their offense. So, you can block it if you choose to. It's a numbers game. But, if you want to run your pass offense – then you would rather not see 0 blitz because you want to get 5 out.
I think it was telling too, because I think it makes guys uncomfortable. Even guys like Josh. I mean, they want to drop back and be able to look at the field and make some plays. But whereas where you just got to step back, wing it out to the side, and let's see let's see who wins on the tackle. If they miss the tackle, we win. If they make the tackle, we don't win. The play is over in a heartbeat almost.
Yep, and it's also, as you know, tough on your O-line because there's identification issues, as to who blocks who. I mean, look, even on the touchdown to Diggs, there's no way you're intentionally leaving a defensive end unblocked. So technically, the protection was not the way it was supposed to be, but they were still able to get a touchdown.
Looking around the league, Greg, this weekend, the Rams will have the debut of Von Miller after the trade. Knowing the kind of defense the Rams play, how do you anticipate him being incorporated into what they do?
And that's going to be fascinating, Chris, because we know about Aaron Donald. We don't need to discuss him. But Leonard Floyd is having a really, really good season, and he is almost exclusively a rusher from the left side of their defense. And that's where he's at his best. He doesn't rush from the other side. So I think you're going to see Von Miller more as almost like a joker, someone who moves around. as opposed to someone who just lines up in one spot, because Floyd's been so good. And that's what I think you'll see. I think this week you'll probably see Miller maybe play 25 snaps, and as time goes on, he could well play more snaps. But the Rams defense is fascinating. For people who don't follow them, they might think because they have Jalen Ramsey that they're a big man-to-man coverage defense. They are among the lowest percentage defenses in the NFL playing man coverage. They're high percentage zone. And in fact, Ramsey, predominantly in their sub, their nickel and dime, he plays inside. He rarely matches up man-to-man on big-time wideouts.
All right. Well, that's pretty interesting. And then Jordan Love is going to be playing for the Packers this week. Do you think anything changes within the scope of their scheme? I mean, there are certain things that Aaron Rodgers can do that not many others can. How much do you think they tweak what they do offensively to maybe fit Jordan's skill set a little better?
I think you'll see them run the ball. That's not a profound statement, but obviously Matt LaFleur, who comes from the Kyle Shanahan school, that he'd like to start with the run game. I think the score will dictate how they play on offense. I think they would like to be in a situation where they can take some shots proactively in normal down and distance situations. As with all quarterbacks, but certainly inexperienced quarterbacks, they would really like to limit long yardage plays. So when they do throw the ball by choice against predictable coverages, I think you'll see a lot of quick game. Think you'll see a lot of throws that are move the chain, stay on schedule type throws. Route concepts like slant flat, curl flat, things where the reads are pretty defined. It's either one read or no read. So I think they'll use the pass game by choice to stay on schedule and then take a few shots. But if the score dictates otherwise and they've got to throw it a lot, then it'll be a whole different deal.
And one other quarterback change that's going to happen this week goes in New Orleans. Now, they had Trevor Siemian take over last week when both Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill were out. Jameis Winston got hurt during the game. Taysom Hill looks like he's going to be back in the lineup. What did Sean Payton, what is he able to do that seemingly so many other teams struggle with? Maybe it's the guys he picks, maybe has an eye for the right backup quarterback, but he's winning games with quarterbacks and in a quarterback league with different quarterbacks where other teams seem to struggle with that. I mean, Trevor Siemian hadn't thrown a pass in, 4 years? And Sean Payton nursed him through a game to a win. That's
without any practice reps.
Yeah, I think that really says something about Sean Payton's abilities as a head coach.
And it almost reminds me, Stephen, you'll remember this, of Joe Gibbs winning 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks.
Yeah, exactly right.
We all know Sean is one of the best in terms of putting together an offense and then play calling and play design during the course of a game. And look, obviously Siemian hadn't played, but Siemian is a guy you can line up with. He's an executor and a ball distributor. Now, he's not high level at that, or he'd be an NFL starter, but that's the style of quarterback he is. Taysom Hill is a whole different guy. You'll obviously see the design quarterback run game as a meaningful part of what they do with Taysom Hill, because that's what he's capable of. So, which, by the way, that in and of itself says an awful lot about Sean Payton, because it's almost a whole different part of your playbook. But Sean is just really good at understanding what his quarterbacks can do and what they can't do, because very few quarterbacks have absolutely no limitations whatsoever.
Last one I have for you, Greg. By no means do we expect a 36-year-old Adrian Peterson to take on the same workload that the Titans had for Derrick Henry. Do we envision perhaps, though, a committee backfield taking on that much of a load, or does the burden now fall to Ryan Tannehill to do more in that Titans offense?
It's a great question. The way I'd answer that is Derrick Henry had far and away more 1st and 10 rushes than any back in the league. They averaged with him almost 17 1st and 10 rushes per game. That's an awful lot. Will they play the same way? I don't think it will be exactly the same. And again, this is all speculation. They have Peterson. They brought it back Deontay Foreman, who's been there before. I think it'll be more running back by committee, quite honestly. I think you might see them take a few shots on 1st down where they feel like they're controlling how the shot is taken. I I think their defense, quite honestly, will determine how this game is played for them offensively, because the Rams are a very good offense. And if the Rams start putting up some points and it's, 17-3 in the second quarter, whereas in the past they might have stayed with Henry, I don't know if they'll stay with Adrian Peterson and Deontay Foreman.
How, if you can put it into words, because everybody's tried and everybody thinks there are those who have completely written off the Tennessee Titans already.
No.
They're going to win that division. No matter, it's almost impossible to conceive that them would lose that division, even though they're a lot of
three-game lead and they swept the Colts already.
Right. So,
I guess we have to wait and see, Steve, because look, we've seen teams, lose 4 or 5 in a row. You never know, but and I think there is going to be a little. I don't want to say a burden, but there's going to be a spotlight on Tannehill for those who believe, and I don't know the answer to this yet, so I'm not sure what to say, but for those who believe that he's purely a function of Derrick Henry and the system, he probably will have a little chip on his shoulder as well. I don't know if he's more than that. I think he throws a good ball. He's got movement ability. We will see if he's asked to do more and have to throw more, how that plays out.
Yeah,
that's
going to be interesting.
As you said, fascinating. That is a good word to describe that, because he will be under the microscope now, going forward for sure, and will probably largely determine whether that team continues on their current trajectory or slides back to the rest of the pack in the AFC. Greg, as always, thanks very much. We look forward to seeing you on the NFL Matchup Show this weekend. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.